It was 2:11 a.m. when the air in the Dubai marina turned electric. Humidity clung to glass and metal, a thin film over a city that never slept. Down on the street, the white lights of a passing Rolls-Royce blurred against puddles left by midnight cleaning trucks. And in a hotel suite overlooking the water, Emma Sinclair's phone buzzed once, a sound that should have meant nothing. The message was short. Just 3 words: check your account. She frowned, half asleep, bathed in the blue light of her screen. Her reflection ghosted across the glass balcony door, the image of a woman caught between dream and reality. Then she saw it. A withdrawal alert, 24,000 gone, followed by another. L18,000, her pulse quickened. Outside, thunder rolled like a warning too late to matter. She tried to call the man who'd promised her forever, Rafiq, the one who spoke of destiny under fairy lights and desert stars. No answer. Moments later, hotel surveillance showed her stepping into the hallway barefoot, clutching her phone, heart hammering through the silence. And then, nothing. No return, no checkout. Only her name flashing across a bank alert in London, while her passport lay untouched on the nightstand. By sunrise, her WhatsApp status still read online, and the man she'd called Prince Charming had disappeared into the wind. But somewhere, deep in the city's surveillance servers, a single transaction log pulsed with life, and that digital heartbeat would expose a truth darker than the desert itself. The sun rose over Dubai like a blade of gold, cutting the haze above the towers. Heat shimmered on the marble promenade, and the marina came alive with sound. Taxis honking at palm-lined curbs, the soft click of heels on polished stone, the distant hum of prayer echoing between skyscrapers. Emma Sinclair watched it all from behind the glass of a cafe window, stirring sugar into her coffee even though she never took sugar. She had landed in Dubai less than 24 hours ago, suitcase in hand, heart unguarded. For months she'd spoken with him, Rafiq Al-Masri, a man whose voice came through her phone like honey over ice. He said he was a pilot. He said he'd been waiting for someone like her. And for the first time in her careful, structured life, she believed it. Her friends called her brave. Her mother called her impulsive. Emma called it fate. She'd left Manchester on a Thursday night, the plane slicing through storm clouds, carrying her toward what she told herself was love. In her bag, a silk dress, a camera, and a folder of printed messages she couldn't stop rereading. He had promised her a week in paradise, a quiet villa by the sea, mornings spent in the air he loved. "You'll understand why I fly," he wrote. "The world looks different when you're above the noise." Those words stayed with her. Above the noise. She imagined herself finally escaping the weight of her office cubicle, the monotony of safety. But the city she arrived in wasn't the one she'd dreamed of. It pulsed with something colder, more mechanical. Every luxury came with silence beneath it. The marina smelled of diesel and roses, and even as she smiled at the beauty of it all, something in her stomach began to twist. The first sign came small. His delay. Rafiq's message at the airport, running late. "Friend will pick you up. Don't worry, you're safe." The man who greeted her held a cardboard sign that said Miss Sinclair. He didn't speak much English. The car smelled faintly of cologne and static electricity. Her phone buzzed again. "Just rest tonight. Tomorrow we'll start our story." It felt romantic then. Later it would feel like a script. Emma checked into the Marina Solace Hotel under his name. The booking prepaid. The staff treated her like royalty. Rose petals on the bed, fruit basket on the table. A note in looping handwriting, "Welcome home." She sat on the balcony that night, watching the city lights glitter on the black water, her reflection layered over a skyline she didn't yet understand. She texted Sophie, "He's real." "I can't believe this." Sophie replied instantly, "Don't disappear on me." Emma sent back a laughing emoji. By morning, that message thread would become evidence. Her first day passed like a postcard. Breakfast by the pool, heat pressing against her skin. A walk through boutiques where air conditioning breathed artificial snow into her hair. Rafiq sent photos throughout the day. A cockpit view, the clouds over Muscat, a smile behind aviator glasses. He promised he'd land by evening. By sunset he hadn't. Instead, a call came through, his voice calm, tender. "Something delayed me. One more night. Tomorrow we'll go to the desert. Just you and me," she believed him. Because belief was easier than doubt. That night she dreamt of wind moving over dunes, her name written in sand. But when she woke, the hotel room felt colder. Her camera had slipped from the nightstand. Lens cap cracked. The orchids in the vase had already begun to droop. She texted him again. "Are you sure everything's okay?" The message showed delivered. No reply. By noon she went downstairs for lunch, ordering something she didn't eat. Her card declined. The waiter smiled politely, assuming a technical error. But when she checked her banking app, she saw it. 2 verification attempts denied from an IP address she didn't recognize. That was the first fracture in her dream. Still, she waited. She told herself technology failed sometimes abroad. She told herself love took patience. By evening, her phone finally vibrated. "Rafik again. Come down to the marina at 7, I'll make it up to you. 7 o'clock. The air thick with perfume and salt." The marina lit like a stage. She wore the silk dress, the one he said he loved in photos. And when she arrived, there he was. Rafik was exactly as she'd imagined, the crisp shirt, the confident smile, the warmth that felt rehearsed but convincing. He handed her a single rose. Finally. She laughed, shy, almost disbelieving. He spoke about flying, about freedom, about how she looked like someone who belonged anywhere. Then over dinner, he asked small questions with surgical precision. Her work, her savings, her travel insurance, her plans to move abroad. At the time, she thought it was intimacy. Later, investigators would call it profiling. Still, for Emma, that dinner was magic. The city blurred behind her. The sound of water against the hulls below became the rhythm of her heartbeat. He promised to show her the real Dubai, the one tourists never saw. A desert under stars, a night she'd never forget, and she never did. When she returned to her room, the staff had already changed the linens. A folded note rested on the pillow, "Tomorrow in sunset. Dress light. Bring your camera." She pressed it between the pages of her journal. That was the last entry she ever wrote. Somewhere beneath the romantic surface, 3 contradictions began to form: silent, invisible, inevitable. The man who said he was a pilot had no pilot's license. The company that booked her room didn't exist. The account that paid her bill would vanish by morning. And yet, as Emma watched the city fall asleep beneath her balcony, she smiled. Because every trap begins with a moment that feels safe. The next morning began with stillness, or the kind that feels staged. The curtains swayed in air conditioning that hummed too evenly. Outside, the sky glared white, a haze of heat smudging the horizon. Emma stood barefoot on the marble floor, the coolness under her skin grounding her as she scrolled through her phone again. Waiting for his message. It came at 9:12 a.m. "Meet me in the lobby at 6. Bring your passport." "We might stay overnight," she smiled. There was something thrilling in the vagueness. Adventure wrapped in trust. But underneath, something else stirred. A hesitation she couldn't name. Why her passport? Why overnight with no details? She brushed the thought away. He'd told her he was spontaneous, that life was too short for plans. So she packed lightly. A linen dress, sunscreen, a small camera bag. Before leaving the room, she snapped one last photo of the balcony view. Sunlight glinting off the marina water like shattered glass. That photo, time-stamped 5:54 p.m., would become evidence later. Downstairs, the lobby pulsed with life. Tourists in linen shirts, children dragging glittering suitcases, a pianist playing softly by the entrance. Emma stood near the fountain, her reflection fractured in the water's ripple. Rafik arrived late, 15 minutes, maybe 20. His smile was perfect, his cologne strong enough to mask the heat. He kissed her cheek and said, "You look like summer." The words made her laugh. She didn't notice how he scanned the room before taking her hand. They walked out to the car, a black Lexus with tinted windows. The driver wasn't the same man from the airport. This one didn't look at her at all. The drive stretched beyond the city, the skyscrapers thinning into desert light. Music filled the silence. An Arabic song she didn't recognize, rhythmic, hypnotic. Rafik talked about the dunes, how he'd camped there since childhood, how silence was sacred. She listened, half dreaming, the road unraveling like a ribbon of gold. At one point, he reached for her hand. "Out here," he said. "Time doesn't matter." The car slowed after an hour. A cluster of villas appeared, pale, geometric, half-empty. Rafik told her it was a friend's property, a private place to watch the sunset. She believed him. The way he said it left no space for doubt. The air outside was heavier, scented with sand and distant rain. They entered the villa. Cool marble, minimal decor, curtains drawn tight. She noticed one odd detail. No personal items, no shoes by the door, no photographs. Only silence and the faint hum of a refrigerator. He poured wine. She took one sip, then another. They laughed about travel, about fate, about the absurdity of meeting online. But as the sky outside dimmed to orange, his phone buzzed twice, short, sharp tones. He excused himself, stepping into another room. Through the closed door, she heard the low murmur of Arabic, then a pause. When he returned, his smile was thinner. "We have to leave soon," he said. "Change of plan." Something flickered in her, an instinct, the body's ancient alarm. She asked why, but he only said, "Wait, trust me." They left before the sun disappeared. The car took a different road and narrower, less traveled. Emma watched the desert blur past, her unease growing with each turn. The driver never spoke. Rafiq stared ahead, jaw tight. She texted Sophie, "Going out of the city." Don't worry, the message showed delivered. It was the last one she'd ever send. At 7:48 p.m., her phone pinged one final tower, south of Al Qudra Road near an unfinished resort. Then silence. Hours later, hotel staff at the Marina Solace noticed her absence. Housekeeping entered the room to deliver chocolates, finding her suitcase open, passport missing, phone charger still plugged into the wall. They assumed she'd checked out early. Her belongings were left untouched. By morning, Sophie began to panic. Emma hadn't replied, hadn't posted, hadn't read messages. Her last WhatsApp tick stayed gray. Sophie called the hotel, the airline, even Rafiq's number. It rang twice, then disconnected. When she finally reached the hotel concierge, the man hesitated. "Miss Sinclair?" he asked. "Yes," she said. "She left yesterday evening." "With a man?" He signed as her companion. Sophie froze. Emma had never mentioned anyone signing anything. In Dubai, 911 doesn't exist. There's a different rhythm to urgency, one that moves slower, quieter. When local authorities were finally notified, they began the process of tracing her movements. The first lead, hotel surveillance. The footage showed Emma in her white linen dress, holding her camera bag, stepping into the lobby at 6:19 p.m. Rafiq entered seconds later, wearing sunglasses indoors. They walked out together hand in hand. No sign of struggle, no hesitation, just two people who looked in love. The car they entered was registered under a shell company in Sharjah, dissolved months earlier. That was clue number one. By the next afternoon, a missing persons alert reached the British consulate. Her family was informed. Her mother, Margaret, fainted when she heard the words "gone missing" in Dubai. Her father booked a flight the same evening. Meanwhile, Rafiq's phone went offline. His Instagram, deleted. His LinkedIn, unscrubbed. Only fragments remained, cached on old travel forums where he'd once posed as a recruiter for private aviation experiences. The deeper investigators dug, the stranger the timeline became. He had a dozen identities: Rafiq, Arif, Rehan, Zain, each linked to a new sim, a different story, a different woman. Emma was number 13. The villa she'd visited was found 2 days later, abandoned, dust settling on untouched furniture, no fingerprints, no DNA, only a single champagne glass with faint lipstick smudge and a hair tie on the floor. Both matched Emma. What didn't match was the villa's ownership. It belonged to a holding company tied to a man currently in custody for financial fraud in Qatar, a name investigators recognized, Rafiq al-Masri, but not the same man who'd met Emma. The breakthrough came from a detail almost missed, a receipt in her hotel room trash bin. A taxi booking from the previous day, time-stamped 11:43 a.m. destination, Al Barsha Exchange House. When authorities checked CCTV there, they saw her standing by the counter smiling politely as she exchanged British pounds for dirhams. Next to her, a man in a cap and mask partially visible. He leaned close as she counted the notes. He was watching the transaction. That man was later confirmed as Rafiq. The exchange log showed she withdrew $5,000 worth of dirhams. It was never found among her belongings. Investigators pieced together the hours between the exchange and her disappearance. Hotel card swipes placed her in and out of her room twice that afternoon. At 3:27 p.m., she used the elevator alone. At 4:02, she was on the pool terrace, smiling in a reflection from another guest's selfie. By 5:54, she took that final balcony photo. Then, the meeting in the lobby. The digital record formed a perfect loop. Too perfect. Someone had erased the rest. The investigation slowed under the weight of bureaucracy and silence. Rafiq's trail grew colder with each passing hour. But there was one thing he hadn't accounted for. Money always leaves a scent. On the third day, a fraud analyst in London noticed something odd. Emma's bank account showed 2 failed login attempts from an IP in Dubai, then a successful one routed through a VPN in Turkey. Within minutes, transfers began. $24,000, then $18,000, then smaller withdrawals disguised as travel bookings. The destination, a private account in the Cayman Islands, opened under a woman's name, Laila Hassan. When traced, that account led to a second beneficiary, Rafiq al-Masri. While authorities built the case, Emma's family landed in Dubai. Margaret stood in the hotel room her daughter last slept in, still carrying her daughter's scent on the pillowcase. She held the folded note. Tomorrow sunset. Dress light. Bring your camera. She pressed it to her chest. Where did she go? She whispered. An investigator beside her simply said, We're trying to follow the money. But money was only half the story. Because hidden inside the hotel's internal systems, someone found a digital ghost, a copy of a deleted keycard log. At 10:41 p.m., Emma's room door opened one last time. Not with her card. With a master key, no one saw who entered. The camera covering that hallway had been turned off 20 minutes earlier. 3 days later, police located the Lexus abandoned near Al Qudra. Inside, sand, a single earring and traces of sedative residue on the backseat fabric. The driver was never found. Neither was Emma, but that was not the end. Because buried inside the bank records amid the digital noise of transactions and VPNs, one transfer stood out, $2,500 sent to Emma's account. Timestamped the morning after she vanished. The sender, Rafiq al-Masri. Memo line, for the promise, a cruel joke, or a taunt. It was the only breadcrumb he ever left behind, and yet even in absence, patterns form. Rafiq, or whoever he was, had repeated this ritual across 3 countries, each time changing his face, his voice, his narrative. But one constant remained, a large insurance payout linked to each woman. What Emma never knew was that 3 weeks before her trip, Rafiq had added her as beneficiary on a policy filed in the UK, naming her as fiancée. In fine print, he was the contingent. If she died, the funds would revert to him. The policy's value? $250,000. That discovery would come later. For now, all Dubai knew was this. A woman had come chasing love and disappeared into a city that erased sound. The last sound she heard might have been wind over sand, or a phone buzzing with a message she never read. Morning light slid over the skyline like a slow revelation. The marina glittered, indifferent to the storm that was about to break beneath it. By then, Emma had been missing for 40 hours. In the stillness of her empty hotel room, investigators stood in silence. Her suitcase sat half open on the bed, her passport gone, a travel guide marked with folded corners. On the nightstand, a lipstick, a half-finished glass of water, and a phone charger still plugged in. It was as if she'd simply stepped out for a moment, expecting to return, but she never did. Detective Omar Rahim led the case. He was known for quiet precision, a man who noticed patterns in noise. He'd handled kidnappings, cons, and disappearances before, but this one unsettled him. Maybe it was the handwriting on the note, elegant, deliberate. Maybe it was the smile in her photos, too genuine to belong in a file marked missing. He began where all cases begin. Movement. Every card swipe, every camera, every pixel of time. The hotel logs gave them a skeleton of her last day. Entry 6:19 p.m. Exit 6:21. No return. The car she entered registered to Al Saraf Holdings, a company that hadn't existed for 3 years. He watched the CCTV on loop. Emma stepping into frame, the soft tilt of her head as Rafiq spoke. She smiled, trusting. The camera caught the brief reflection of a second man through the glass doors, the driver. No face, only a wristwatch, silver military style. That detail would matter later. Her parents arrived that afternoon, escorted to the precinct by consulate officials. Margaret Sinclair clutched her daughter's journal like scripture. She spoke through tears, her voice trembling yet precise. She wasn't reckless. She was hopeful. That's not the same thing, Omar listened. He'd heard versions of that line before. She wasn't careless, she was kind. But kindness, he knew, often left footprints others could follow. When Margaret handed him the journal, he flipped through carefully. There were press tickets, coffee receipts, little notes written in looping cursive. On the last page, a sketch, a plane over the sea captioned, "Above the noise." The same phrase Rafiq had once texted her. Interpol was contacted. Within 12 hours, the name Rafiq al-Masri returned 6 different identity hits, none matching a valid passport. Every image tied to the name was close but not perfect. Same eyes, different jaw. Same smile, different scars. Whoever he was building himself piece by piece. Omar shifted focus to the one thing that didn't lie: money. The transactions in Emma's account revealed the first real clue. 5 withdrawals within 36 hours, all routed through different devices. He traced one to an ATM in Dira. CCTV showed a man in a white kandura withdrawing cash under a baseball cap. He looked straight at the camera once, eyes dark, expression calm. The time: 9:02 p.m., hours after Emma's phone went dark. Meanwhile, Margaret and her husband, David, sat in the hotel lobby where Emma had last stood. Her father stared at the fountain for minutes at a time, as if hoping her reflection would appear. Every corner of the place carried her shadow. Margaret asked to see the footage herself. When she did, she broke down. She was looking for someone in that crowd, she whispered. Someone to make her feel safe. The footage froze. Emma glancing over her shoulder once, uncertain. It was the only moment she looked afraid. 3 days later, the case reached international attention. News outlets called it the Dubai disappearance. Social media filled with speculation, romantic theories, conspiracies. Some said she ran away. Others whispered of trafficking rings. Omar ignored it all. He trusted silence more than noise. His team began a digital sweep, tracking phone towers, airport records, private CCTV. A breakthrough came from an unlikely source, a toll gate camera. On Al Qudra Road, 20 kilometers south of the city, an automated gate had captured a black Lexus at 7:32 p.m. The plate number matched Emma's car. The image was grainy but clear enough to see 2 silhouettes inside, driver and passenger. She was still alive then. What drew Omar's eye wasn't the people, it was the object dangling from the rearview mirror. A red lanyard with the logo of Skyreach Aviation. Cross-referencing that name led to a small office registered under yet another shell company, one that had closed after its owner was arrested in Morocco for fraud. The owner's alias? Rafiq al-Masri. But the trail went colder as quickly as it heated. Every address led to a dead number, every contact to a wall. The only lead left was a transfer, the $2,500 labeled for the promise. A banker traced it to a single device, a MacBook Air connected through a public Wi-Fi hotspot near a marina cafe. Omar went there himself. The smell of roasted coffee and salt air lingered in the place. He sat at the exact table the man had used. The waitress remembered him. Polite, quiet, paid in cash, he'd ordered 2 coffees, but only one had been touched. The deeper Omar dug, the clearer the pattern became. Rafiq, or whoever he was, hunted in the same digital waters every time. Dating apps, expat forums, social travel groups, always women traveling alone, always a story of fate. Interpol flagged similar reports in Spain, Greece, and Singapore. Women who vanished after meeting a man with aviation stories and a soft, deliberate accent. Most reappeared days later, dazed, their accounts emptied. But Emma's case was different. She never came back. Margaret refused to leave. Every night she returned to the marina, leaving flowers at the railing. The staff stopped trying to move her along. Sometimes she'd talk to the air as if Emma might answer. David sat by her side, holding her hand, saying nothing. He had once been a police officer. He knew how these stories ended, but still he hoped. At the precinct, Omar's team discovered something unusual. The insurance policy Emma never knew about. Filed under a joint application, it named her as the insured and Rafiq as beneficiary. dated 3 weeks before her trip. To file it, he'd used scanned copies of her documents, ID, signature, even her digital verification photo. Forgery so clean it fooled automated systems. Where had he gotten them? From her own messages. Her emails to him where she'd shared images for travel booking. Omar exhaled slowly. He built her disappearance before she even boarded the plane. They contacted the insurance provider. An agent confirmed an attempted claim filed 48 hours after her last signal. Rejected for lack of a death certificate. The listed claimant's address, an apartment complex in Marina Heights. By the time officers reached it, the place was empty. Drawers left open. A faint smell of cologne. On the counter, the single torn photograph. Emma laughing at the marina. Her reflection caught behind the lens of another camera. The hand holding that camera matched Rafiq's. Days turned into weeks. The case stretched across borders, Dubai to London, London to Istanbul. Interpol analysts traced the fake companies and accounts until they converged on one name, Amir Khan, born in Karachi, 1982. Former aviation technician. Known for fraud and identity theft. Last sighting, entering Dubai under a false business visa. He was Rafiq. But where was Emma? Omar reconstructed his movements. From the toll gate, the Lexus had headed toward a remote construction zone once used for luxury desert safaris. No witnesses, no cameras, but satellite images from that night showed something faint. Tire tracks leading off-road toward a cluster of dunes. When officers arrived, they found fragments, a silk scarf, a cracked camera lens, and 50 meters away, half buried in sand, Emma's handbag still zipped, her phone inside. The screen was dead, but forensic techs pulled its memory. One photo had failed to upload, taken seconds before the device went offline. It showed a horizon of dunes, the blurred outline of a man stepping toward her. The reflection in his sunglasses was unmistakable. Rafiq. Back in the city, Omar watched that image for hours. Each detail weighed heavier. Her hand trembling slightly, the sun haloed behind her, the edge of fear she hadn't yet recognized. He didn't show it to her parents immediately. He waited until morning. When Margaret saw it, she didn't cry. She just whispered. She was still looking for beauty. The case turned international. Interpol issued a red notice for Amir Khan, but he was already gone. CCTV at Dubai International showed him boarding a flight to the Maldives under a forged passport. 3 hours before the villa search began. His seat was paid for in cash. The name on the ticket, Daniel Reed. Still, Omar refused to close the case. He believed people always leave residue, digital, emotional, something. He traced the Cayman account again and found another transfer. Not from Emma this time, but to someone new. A woman in London. $3,000 labeled Travel Startup Investment. The woman's name, Clara White. She had met Rafiq online 2 months before Emma. They'd planned a reunion soon, in Paris. Omar called her. Her voice trembled. He said he was flying in next week. To propose. That was the moment Omar realized Emma might not have been the end. She was one of a sequence. Each woman a page in a script he kept rewriting. With Interpol coordination, Clara agreed to a controlled meeting. The cafe was wired, surveillance teams in position. At 9:14 a.m., a man matching Rafiq's description arrived. Clean-shaven, linen shirt, same calm smile. When he greeted Clara, he used the same line. "You look like summer." Officers closed in. He didn't resist, just sighed as if inconvenienced. "You're late," he told them. His real name, Amir Khan. His real job, con artist, trafficker, manipulator. His victims, 13 confirmed across 7 countries, but none of them could answer what happened to Emma. During interrogation, he spoke softly, like a man reciting a dream. He denied killing her. She left, he said. She wanted freedom. I gave her that, then smiled. Some people don't want to be found. Omar stared at him across the table. And you? He asked. And do you? Amir looked down at his hands where faint grains of sand still clung. He didn't answer. Weeks later, divers found something near the old resort site. A fragment of bone. Traces of the linen fabric Emma wore that night. DNA confirmed the match. The desert had finally spoken. For Margaret, the call came at dawn. Her scream was silent, a sound that never left her throat. She held the phone tight, eyes fixed on the empty horizon outside the hotel window. David placed a hand on her shoulder. Neither spoke. The world kept turning. The marina glimmered as it always had. But for them, time stopped. Omar closed the file at midnight, writing one last note in the report. The truth was always in her trust. He weaponized her belief. He stood by the window, looking out at the city lights. In them he saw a reflection, not of crime, but of human fragility. A woman who dreamed of love and a man who turned love into architecture for deceit. The sand outside still carried her story. It whispered when the wind rose. Night over Dubai was a mirror, black glass and scattered lights reflecting everything and revealing nothing. Inside the precinct, the hum of air conditioning filled the silence between words. Detective Omar Rahim sat at his desk, staring at the evidence board. Emma's name circled in red. The photo of Amir Khan beside it, his calm expression caught mid-blink. But it was a smaller detail that kept him awake. The bank transfer. Not the first one. The last one. A payment made after Emma's death. It was flagged by Interpol 3 weeks later. A transfer of $4,800 from a dormant offshore account, once used by Amir, to a new recipient in Dubai. The label read simply, "For the villa." But the account holder wasn't Amir. It was Layla Hassan, a woman with no criminal record, no social media presence, and an address tied to a luxury apartment overlooking Jumeirah Bay. Omar's instincts tightened. He'd seen this pattern before. Women behind the mask of men. Some accomplices by choice, others by fear. He went alone that night, standing on the pavement beneath her building. The glass facade shimmered, hiding more than it showed. When she finally opened the door, she didn't look surprised. Layla was composed. Tall, elegant, the kind of beauty that had learned to defend itself. Her eyes flicked to his badge, then away. "I wondered when you'd come," she said. Inside, the air smelled of jasmine and antiseptic. Every surface gleamed. On the counter, a single framed photograph. Her and Amir standing before an airplane hangar. He wore the same pilot uniform. The same easy smile. "You knew him as Rafiq?" Omar asked. "I knew him as Amir," she replied softly. "But not the man you think he was." She poured 2 glasses of water, her hand trembling slightly as she set his down. "He told me he was starting over. That he wanted to do things right this time. He said she was different." Omar stayed quiet. Layla's voice broke the stillness. "He said she wanted to fly." From her story, the truth unfolded slowly, painfully. Layla had met Amir 4 years earlier. Back then he was running a charter service in Casablanca, small flights for tourists. He'd charmed her too, promised a partnership, love, security. But 6 months in, he emptied their business account and disappeared. She'd filed a report. No one cared, until one night 2 years later he called her again. Apologetic, broken. Said he wanted to repay what he'd stolen. Offered her a deal to handle paperwork for an investment. She refused at first. But guilt, like love, has a way of softening memory. So when he sent her a package of forms, she signed without reading them. One of those forms? Emma Sinclair's travel insurance. Omar listened, the picture rearranging itself in his mind. Emma's disappearance wasn't impulsive. It was staged long before she ever stepped on the plane. Her trip, her hotel, her romance, all built from data stolen from others. Amir hadn't met Emma by chance. He'd studied her. Layla slid an envelope across the table. Inside were photographs, dozens of them. Women smiling in airports, cafes, beach resorts. Each one a different country, but the same man behind the camera. The same red lanyard, he kept them, she whispered. Every single one. Omar turned over one of the photos and froze. It wasn't Emma. It was a blonde woman in Spain standing beside a silver car. And yet behind her reflection in the window, another face appeared. Emma's. Faint but visible. A reflection of a reflection. When was this taken? Omar asked. Layla frowned. Last year, maybe? I don't know. It didn't make sense. Emma hadn't even met Amir then. Unless she'd seen him before. He went back through Emma's laptop, the backup copy from forensics. Thousands of photos sorted by date. Vacation albums, work dinners, nights out. In one, a picture from a marketing conference in Madrid. Behind her in the crowd, a man half-turned toward the lens. Sharp jaw, silver watch, aviator glasses, Amir. He'd been watching her for almost a year. Omar felt the weight of that revelation like a physical ache. The patience, the orchestration, it wasn't random. It was ritual, and yet something deeper still didn't fit. The money. The second transfer. Why pay Layla after Emma was gone? He returned to the bank records. The villa transaction wasn't for a property. It was for a storage unit, an abandoned one near Ras Al Khor industrial area. The file labeled it as private holding. Omar went there the next morning. The heat was suffocating. Concrete walls, dust, silence. When the lock was cut and the door lifted, the smell hit first. Metal, sand, faint perfume. Inside, under a tarpaulin, stood an old Cessna fuselage. Disassembled, stripped of wings, and inside its cockpit, taped to the dashboard, a single envelope. He tore it open carefully. Inside, one photograph, Emma. Alive, eyes wide, wind in her hair. The horizon behind her endless and blue. On the back, a message written in neat Arabic script. She wanted to fly. I let her. Forensics confirmed the image metadata taken after her supposed death. Date stamp 2 days later. Location data, stripped, but traces matched the coastal GPS of Ras Al Had, Oman. If true, she had crossed the border, alive. The possibility changed everything. Omar called Interpol immediately. A team in Muscat retraced border surveillance. 2 vehicles matched the Lexus description, but plates were switched. One camera caught a brief reflection in a petrol station window. A woman in sunglasses wearing a scarf. The posture, the shape. It could have been Emma, or someone made to look like her. Meanwhile, Amir sat in custody, calm as ever. When Omar entered the interrogation room, he looked up and smiled faintly. I hear you found my plane, he said. You said she left? Omar replied. She did, Amir said, leaning back. Just not how you think. You made her disappear. No, he murmured. She chose it. I only showed her how. He reached into his pocket slowly and placed something on the table. A folded train ticket. European print. Tuscany, he said. She told me that was her dream. A life without noise. Omar stared at him. What do you mean? You'll see, Amir whispered. She was smarter than you think. That night, Omar couldn't sleep. He reopened the case files, tracing every location Emma had mentioned in her journal. One stood out, a note scribbled in the margin. If things ever get too loud, Tuscany. He contacted Interpol's European branch. Within a week, they found it. A withdrawal from Emma's bank card, Florence, Italy. 2 months after her disappearance, Omar flew there himself. The Italian countryside rolled past the window. Vineyards, terracotta roofs, sunlight like honey. He arrived in a small town outside Siena, following the ATM coordinates to a narrow street lined with lavender. The clerk at the post office remembered her immediately. English woman, quiet, always wore a hat. When did she stop coming? About a month ago. Omar's pulse quickened. He checked nearby records, guest houses, rentals. At a rural villa under the name E. Sanders, a reservation matched Emma's birthday. He went there at dusk. The villa stood empty now. Dust covered the furniture, shutters closed. But in the bedroom, a suitcase sat under the bed. Inside were clothes, a camera, and a sealed envelope addressed to Margaret Sinclair. He opened it. Inside, a photograph of Emma smiling under a Tuscan sky. And a note. Mom, I wanted to believe he loved me. But what he gave me was something different. A chance to start again. I don't know if I deserve that. If you're reading this, please forgive me. I'm not gone. I just can't be who I was. Omar sat down slowly, the sound of cicadas filling the silence. She was alive once, maybe not anymore. The handwriting matched perfectly, the words unmistakable. But the date, June 3rd, 3 weeks after Amir's arrest. He returned to Dubai with the letter. When he placed it on the table before Amir, the man only smiled wider. She was never yours to find. You forged it, Omar said. Then prove it, Amir whispered. Or ask yourself why she never called. Omar left the room without answering. Some truths couldn't be forced. They had to be unearthed, grain by grain. Back in London, Margaret received the same letter by post, an identical copy, postmarked from Italy. For a week, she believed it. She told reporters her daughter was living freely, that love had simply taken her somewhere else. But when forensic linguists analyzed the syntax, they found a subtle anomaly. phrases matching Amir's earlier texts. It was his voice dressed in her words. He hadn't freed her. He'd rewritten her. Omar revisited Layla. When he showed her the Tuscany letter, she began to cry for the first time. He always talked about vanishing, she said. About teaching people to disappear. He said the internet made it easy. You just needed to die once. Then she hesitated. But there was something else. He mentioned a second girl, someone he said reminded him of Emma. Who? He didn't say. Only that she was coming to Dubai soon. Omar's blood ran cold. He called Interpol again. There it was, a new tourist visa, same pattern. A young woman from Glasgow traveling alone. Destination, Dubai Marina, her contact number. Registered to Layla Hassan. They acted fast. Surveillance team stationed at the airport. The woman, Jessica Morgan, 26, arrived mid-morning. At the terminal exit, a driver held a sign. Miss Morgan, Al Saraf Holdings. The same company name Emma's driver once used. Within seconds, he was detained. The man's ID was fake. His phone contained messages from a contact saved only as Captain. The last one read, "Make her feel safe. I'll handle the rest." The IP trace led to an old device connected to the same network Amir once used. From his cell, he had an accomplice still outside, someone he trusted, someone with access. When they raided Layla's apartment that night, it was empty. On the kitchen counter lay a single object, a red lanyard. And beneath it, a printed plane ticket. Destination, Florence, Italy, Omar realized too late. Layla wasn't a victim anymore. She was the continuation. Interpol agents in Florence arrived at the airport 40 minutes before her flight landed. Among the passengers stepping off was Layla, no longer hiding, and beside her a woman in a scarf and hat. She kept her head down, sunglasses covering her face. When authorities intercepted them, Layla didn't resist. She only turned to the woman beside her and whispered something. The woman nodded once. When she lifted her face, Omar's heart stopped. It was Emma, older, thinner, but undeniably her. She spoke little at first, her voice quiet, distant. He told me I could leave if I helped him vanish. How? Omar asked. He made me his ghost. Every new woman, every new life, I helped build them. I was supposed to be the ending that kept him believable. And you stayed? He said if I ran, my mother would never know the truth. Her eyes flicked toward Layla, now silent in handcuffs. She thought she was saving me, Emma said softly. But he'd saved none of us. Back in Dubai, Amir waited in his cell. When they told him she was alive, his face changed for the first time. Not anger, not fear. Something close to satisfaction, you see, he said quietly. She really did learn to fly. Omar watched him in silence. There were no victories in this kind of work, only endings that hurt less than the others. Emma was placed under protection. She refused publicity, refused interviews. When asked what she wanted, she said only, to go home. And not be found. Omar closed his file months later. The case was marked resolved, partial recovery. But for him, it never really ended. Sometimes he'd walk the marina late at night where it all began. The lights reflected on the water like broken constellations. He imagined her somewhere far away, standing on a balcony watching a different horizon. Alive, but no longer the same. The courtroom smelled faintly of wood polish and dust. Outside cameras flashed in the desert glare, the noise of headlines echoing against stone. Inside, the air was still. Amir Khan sat behind glass, hands folded, expression unreadable. Emma Sinclair sat only a few meters away, alive but not whole. The world called it the Dubai Promise case. To the press, she was a miracle. To Omar Rahim, she was evidence that monsters could build beauty before they destroyed it. When the trial opened, prosecutors outlined a pattern of deception that spanned 7 countries. Fraud, trafficking, identity theft, coercion. They played the recordings, his voice soft, deliberate. Trust is the easiest currency to counterfeit. The jury listened without blinking. Layla Hassan's testimony came next, shaking, repentant. She described how he'd found her years before, how love blurred into obedience, how she'd helped forge the papers that made Emma's new life disappear. He said he could make anyone vanish, she whispered. He almost made me vanish too. Her words hung in the courtroom like smoke. Emma testified last. Her voice trembled at first, then steadied into something cold and clear. She described the night in the desert, the silence, the stars, the promise of escape. How he'd told her, if you want to stop being hunted, become the ghost. He'd given her a choice, or what felt like one. He said if she staged her death, no one would look for her. He'd take the blame, then vanish himself. She agreed, not realizing the script had been written long before her consent. He didn't kill me, she said. He erased me, and I helped him. The room was silent. Even Amir looked down. When the verdict came, it was almost anticlimactic. Guilty on all counts. Sentenced to 40 years without parole. The crowd outside cheered. But inside, Emma's mother simply closed her eyes, tears slipping quietly down her face. Justice rarely feels like peace. Omar stayed until the room emptied. He watched Emma step out into the corridor, blinking against the flash of cameras. The world had already decided what she was. A survivor, a headline, a symbol. But symbols are just stories told too many times. He wondered who she would be when no one was watching. Weeks later, Omar received a small envelope at the station. No return address. Inside was a single photograph, Tuscany again. The same villa, the same lavender field, only this time no one stood in it. On the back, one line in her handwriting, "Some ghosts choose sunlight." He smiled faintly. He didn't file it as evidence. He kept it in his desk. For Margaret Sinclair, the return of her daughter was both a miracle and a burden. The London house that once echoed with grief now felt uneasy with silence. Emma moved through it carefully like a guest. Reporters camped outside, hungry for details she couldn't give. She stopped answering the door, stopped opening the curtains. Her mother tried to reach her with small kindnesses, tea, old photographs, letters. But trauma makes distance its first language. At night, Emma dreamed of engines and dunes, of a voice whispering, "Trust me." She would wake before dawn and sit by the window until light broke over the city. One morning she began painting again. Landscapes, always horizons, never faces. In Dubai, Omar's team closed the file. Paperwork replaced adrenaline. Silence replaced pursuit. But he couldn't stop thinking about the architecture of the crime. The way Amir had designed every step, leaving beauty in the trail of ruin. It wasn't greed alone. It was control. An artist of illusion. He reread Emma's journal, the one recovered from her hotel room. Between pages of sketches and dreams, one sentence stood out. "Maybe we mistake danger for destiny." He copied it on a note and pinned it above his desk. It became his quiet warning, to himself, to others. Layla Hassan was extradited to Morocco. Her cooperation spared her prison. She opened a small shop by the sea. When Omar received her postcard months later, it simply read, "He taught me to vanish. I'm teaching myself to stay." For the families of other victims, Emma's survival became proof that closure was possible. Interpol used her testimony to unravel more aliases, more accounts. Each woman found some echo of her own story in the files. Same words, same promises, same plane ticket dreams. But not all stories ended with rescue. Some were just names on missing persons lists, memories sealed behind bureaucratic glass. Omar read those lists sometimes. He wondered if justice ever reached far enough. 6 months later, the desert gave back something unexpected. A hiker near Ras Al Khor found a buried case, metal, corroded but sealed. Inside, photographs, hundreds. Each woman catalogued, smiling, free. Each with a date and a single line in Amir's handwriting. Found her. It wasn't trophies he'd kept. It was his ledger. His proof of control. When Omar saw Emma's photo among them, he noticed one difference. Hers was the only one with a second line underneath. She looked back. He didn't know what it meant. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe defiance. Either way, it ended the same. She had lived and he hadn't broken her completely. The final chapter of the case unfolded quietly. Amir's appeal failed. He was transferred to a high-security facility. On his first night there, he requested a single book, The Little Prince. When the guard asked why, he said, "Because it's about someone who leaves and never really comes back." Weeks later, he refused food. By the third week, he was gone. No note, no confession, just an empty cell and the faint scent of cologne on his pillow. Omar didn't attend the burial. He preferred the story unfinished. In the years that followed, Emma rebuilt slowly. She changed her name again, moved to the countryside. She volunteered with organizations helping victims of online fraud, but she never spoke publicly about what happened. When people asked, she would smile and say, it was a lesson in believing the wrong kind of story. Sometimes at dusk, she'd walk through the fields alone. The horizon still called to her, the same pull that once led her into danger. Now it simply meant peace. She kept one photograph framed on her wall, a grainy image from a marina, her younger self stepping toward a man with a kind smile. She never looked at his face, only at the light on the water behind them. Back in Dubai, Omar was promoted. He declined a ceremony, choosing instead to visit the marina one last time. The evening breeze carried salt and faint music from nearby cafes. He stood by the railing where Emma once disappeared into the night. Tourists laughed, unaware of what the place remembered. He dropped a small coin into the water. It sank without a sound. In the fading light, the ripples spread outward, vanishing into reflection. "Every truth leaves a shadow," he murmured. "Some just take longer to find." Then he turned and walked away. Months later, Margaret received another envelope. No return address again. Inside, a photograph of the Tuscan hills at sunrise. On the back, one line in her daughter's hand. "Home is where the story stops." She placed it beside the old family portrait, the one taken before everything fractured. And for the first time in years, she smiled without breaking. The world moved on. News cycles ended, but the echoes remained. In policy reforms, in travel safety campaigns, in quiet conversations between mothers and daughters before flights. Emma's story became cautionary, then mythic, then forgotten by all but those it touched. In the end, it wasn't about death or deceit. It was about trust, the currency of every heart, the weapon of every fraud. And somewhere, far from the cameras, a woman walked down a sun-drenched path lined with olive trees. Her face hidden beneath a wide hat, her footsteps light, the past behind her, the horizon ahead. The same wind that once carried lies now brushed against her skin like forgiveness. She paused, turned once toward the sky and whispered to no one. Above the noise, the world kept its silence.